Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to the November LEO Community Update. Thank you for joining. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. Please keep in mind that today's session will be recorded and posted to the LEO Community website by close of business on Monday. You can also view past community updates on that website, and I'm pleased to announce that at the end of tomorrow, we will be posting frequently asked questions based on the questions we've received during these sessions, as well as the questions we received via Ask Leo. Today, if you have any questions during our session, please utilize the WebEx Q&A panel. If you are having a technical issue, please utilize the chat panel, and we will respond to you as soon as possible. Thank you for joining. I am joined today by Marie Sini, Acting Provost, and Pete Young, CIO. This is Nikki Gramanis speaking, and I am the Project Manager for LEO. Marie, would you like to start us off this morning?
Absolutely. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Thank you.
All right. So, folks, we're trying a new process this morning. We're not all in the same room coming to you. So if you're having any problems, as Nikki said, please go to the chat area and tell the folks there who are watching it what your issue is. If you can't hear me very well or you can't see something, and they'll help you. And what I'm going to ask is that I'm going to go through this series of slides. And if you have questions as we're going through, please make a note, jot something down to yourself. And then at the end, if you would, let's go through the questions and answers. And so if you have a question for me or a question for Pete, who is our CIO, save it till the end. Let's do the question and answer. Type it in. I will read the question, and then we will determine the best person to give you an answer. And then we'll take it from there. So today what we're going to be talking about are really, there'll be 4 sections. We're going to be talking about the first phase of the learning experience online. And I want to make sure that, I'll say this again and again, probably till you're sick of me, but we're going to be talking a lot about the new learning management system. But I want to make the point that the new learning management system, which is Desire to Learn, is really just one phase. Actually, could we go back to that last slide? Yeah, I want to talk about today's 4 topics, but I will get ahead of this. I'll get to the next topic. But anyway, when I say LEO Phase 1, it's really the broad learning experience with the learning management system just part of it. We'll then talk about the project status update, and I have to say, Nikki really is the expert there. I will do my best, but I might need to defer to her on a couple of these things. Nikki is really keeping us focused on getting the work done, and so she's just been a valuable partner in all of this. I then want to talk about our academic vision, because really we could have, the best, latest, and greatest technology, but if we don't have a vision and an understanding of where we're headed in terms of teaching and learning at UMUC, it's really going to be hard to pick the correct technologies. So we have some work to do internally, and I'm going to talk to you about that and how that vision is being put together and your role that I'll be asking all of you to play in it. And then finally, we'll do the question and answer session. So, okay, Nikki, now we can go to the next slide. All right. Again, LEO scope. You're going to hear us talking about LEO, Learning Experience Online, and that is the broadest definition that we will be talking about in terms of how our students learn. And I asked Nikki and her team to put a new picture together to really give us an idea of what that is. So LEO, when I talk about LEO, and when any of us talk about LEO, we will be really referring to all the features, functions, and technology that support the UMUC classroom. And it will have to be based on a vision of where we want to go with teaching and learning. And that's something for the academic affairs side of things to really be working on. And we've started that, and I'll tell you a little bit about that later. The first phase, and let me just say, if you look at the big yellow ball sitting in front of you, the learning experience online has many, many pieces to it, right? So if our students are learning, if they're in a 3-credit classroom situation online or even hybrid, there are many pieces to, many technological pieces certainly to their learning, and we will be putting the best of breed of each of these in place as time goes on. But we're starting with a very important piece, and I know this is the one that's creating all the excitement and where all the questions are, but I don't want us to forget the bigger picture. So the first phase is the one that everybody's interested in right now, which is that we're implementing Desire to Learn, which is our new learning management solution. And again, Desire to Learn will be the new Web Tyco, but I think you'll find it to be quite different than your past experience. And we can move on now, Nikki, or who's ever. Okay, so Leo Phase 1 is this spring. We're going to be doing the first pilot, and perhaps actually what we really need to call it is the first demonstration. Pilot is really kind of sends the message that it might or might not work. This is going to work. It's just that we're going to be learning a lot as we do it, which will then help to inform the next phases. So Phase 1 next spring means that we will be offering some sections of AMBA 640 in the graduate school. There's a lot of work between now and then, more than I think most of us would really have even dreamed of. Because it seems kind of simple, right? Well, we just put up a couple of course shells and we put some content in and we try out Desire to Learn. And really, we're such a big institution, and there's so many dependencies in our technology that the work already began probably a month, 2 months ago, and it's continuing. And even doing this in the spring with a lot of folks working on it, we'll be right up to the last minute getting all of this put together. I just want people to understand the enormity of the work here when you've got 97,000 students around the world. So where we are right now is that our team is working on creating the course shells. And between now and the beginning of the demonstration, or Phase 1, we will also be putting together this fully functioning classroom, which will include, if you look down at Leo Phase 1, a syllabus, learning materials, library reserve materials, study groups, gradebook. It will have as many of these things as AMBA 640 normally has. It can have all of them. It can have some subset of them. It will be dependent on what the program director and the faculty would normally have in this course. And there will be 5 of these course sections all set up. Our course development team will be really working on building these courses. I don't want faculty to worry that they're going to have to be in there playing around at this phase. We really just want them to be in there teaching and doing what they do best. So we're about almost a third of the way through, but lots of work to still come to get us ready for spring 2013, when we will do the first demonstration, Phase 1, of our new Desire to Learn. So I think we can move.
Yeah,
Yep.
And Marie, this is Nikki. Just one thing I'd like to add on this slide. For Phase 1, some of these items, particularly we get a lot of questions about the syllabus. The Desire to Learn system for Phase 1 will not be fully integrated with the worldwide syllabus tool. So this very first iteration will include a syllabus that is a manual process, and it will be a manual process to plug in some of the content in the classroom for AMBA 640. I know we receive a lot of questions around that. Today, Web Tyco is integrated with a number of systems, and for Phase 1, that will not be the case. Again, that doesn't mean any work for faculty. We'll take care of that with the course development team and the project team. I just thought that would help to clarify for folks.
Yeah, and let me also make another comment about that. Many of you who teach for us, I would assume that some folks have heard of what we call the syllabus tool, and some might not even be aware that it exists. The syllabus tool is really a piece of software that was developed just for UMUC, actually a number of years ago now. It's been a while. That helps the chair, the program director, manage the many, many sections of a course. So it allows the, say, program director to develop the parts of the syllabus that are pretty much standard across all the many sections, and then allows that program director to push out the syllabus into the course shells so the faculty in each section know which sections of syllabus are standard, like the course description. You don't want people changing that because it's a standard course description. But then, you know, which week the readings are due or what kind of assignments, you know, that's where faculty are in there really designing their course. Those are the parts that can change. There have been frustrations over the years with our course syllabus tool. Some of it is the technology, but I have to say a lot of it is due to the misunderstanding of how to use it and what it's for. And I want to assure everybody that we are, along with our folks in IT, are looking at this and will be putting in place a process like the syllabus tool, but more improved. So I know there are questions, and I want everybody to understand that we're working on that. We need something like that. We need a syllabus tool. We need a software program that helps us manage the hundreds and thousands of sections of courses that we have out there. And always what we're trying to do is improve it and make it the best that it can be. But I think a lot of it truly is going to be training so that everybody who's using it understands exactly what needs to happen at each step. Okay, I think we could move on. And thanks, Nikki. I appreciate anybody jumping in whenever there's a point that should be clarified.
Great, thank you.
So one of the sets of questions that we're getting has to do with the faculty, both the faculty who will be teaching in AMBA 640 in the spring, but also the thousands of you out there who know at some point next year you'll be teaching in Desire to Learn. And there's a real interest in when will I be trained. And first thing I will tell you is I've been here now since 2008. I have been here through the phases when sometimes things would be rolled out and there wouldn't be enough time for good training. And sometimes there wasn't even any training at all. And that does impact the faculty, and we understand that. So that is not going to happen this time, I assure you. This is why we've got so many sophisticated project managers working with us to make sure that all the phases are occurring. So for LEO Phase 1, again, in the spring, the 5 course sections of ANBA 640, the folks that need to be trained will be trained. So there will be work that has to occur ahead of time to make sure the courses are stood up. But the faculty will be trained in plenty of time so that they are ready to teach. And again, you can see how, you know, it takes a village. We now have to have our Center for Teaching and Learning developing training for Desire to Learn, and they're actively working on this. And they will be training the faculty to help make sure that they know how to use it. Honestly, I don't think there's going to be a huge learning curve. What you find with these things is that most of these functions, once you learn it in one type of learning management system, it's pretty easy to then generalize or transfer that knowledge. At the same time, we understand that training and support have to be in place, and of course it will be. So for all other UMUC faculty, this is really important. There will be no training for LEO Phase 1. So don't be thinking in terms of, gee, I might have to sign up for a training program to get ready for this first phase. Unless you're in that phase, unless you're teaching AMBA 640, you won't actually be part of it. That doesn't mean you won't be trained when it's time for you to be trained. So 6 to 8 weeks before you will actually have to teach in Desire to Learn, you will be trained in how to actually use Desire to Learn. You don't want to go too much ahead of that because we all have that, you know, we forget, I would. And you don't want to have it all the way up right before it because then you're stressed and you're trying to get it all in. So we think about 6 to 8 weeks, there will be these phases as we roll out across chunks of courses. Okay, anything you guys want to learn or add to this, Nikki, or?
No, I think that covers it. I do see a question coming in. I know we said save questions till the end, but I think it merits responding now. Theo Stone, I see a question about who will be training CTL. So Marie mentioned that CTL will be developing training, and while that is true, we are still in the early phases of defining the strategy and the project team. So they haven't been engaged quite yet, but we do have a plan to train all of our staff, both in CTL and through the support teams, everyone that needs to be trained prior to faculty and students using Desire to Learn. And we'll be partnering with our vendor, Desire to Learn, to conduct that training over the next few months.
It's probably worth saying, Nikki, Desire to Learn has been in the business for a long time, and they are solely dedicated to this learning management system. They have training teams that we have as part of our contract with them that will be doing all of the training, correct?
That is correct, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later in the presentation.
Great. We wanted to simplify how we want to help folks think about what's happening in the spring. Again, people, and me too, I mean, you know, there's only a certain amount of information I can get my head around, and so it might seem like, gee, you just take Desire to Learn out of the box and you start using it. But, you know, like any software, it has what you might call out-of-the-box functionality, you know, certain features that come with it you know, that you can choose. Those features have to be tailored for UMUC. There are things that we want Desire to Learn do. There are other things that we want it to do maybe a little differently. These have to be broad conversations. They have to be connected to our learning vision. They have to be connected to how we want our students to learn as we go through the program. So again, there are lots of decisions and a lot of work that has to be done, and the academic folks really have to be informing the IT. You know, IT can do anything we want them to do within, you know, scope of how many people they have working for them, but we have to have these conversations with them. So the LEO project team is really customizing the Desire to Learn system to fit our pedagogy and learning model. Now, that doesn't mean that there will be some hidden features somewhere that we won't tell you about, not at all. I think one of the things we need to do in these monthly updates is to tell you more and more as time goes on about our vision for the future in terms of how students will be learning and how we'll be offering programs. That work, again, is being done by folks within academic affairs, and you will all be asked for input, those of you on the academic side of things. And then that model will be used to customize Desire to Learn. Those will be very out in the open.
Right, and Marie, Pete is here in the room with us. Pete is our CIO for those of you on the phone, and we just, what's really wonderful about having a team of folks working on this project is we all hear words and think a little differently about what they mean. So
yeah, so there's a question that just came in, Marie, and this is from George Harding. I think we want to be careful or mindful of the word. So I think as Marie alluded to, we talk about customizing Desire to Learn. For those of you who are more, you know, technology-centric, the term really should be configuring. So being very mindful of the fact that we are not in the business of customizing or rewriting commercial software. I think what, you know, Marie's intent clearly is to suggest that any commercial software has to be configured for your use, and our pedagogy may be perhaps different somewhat than the next schools. But most all of these software assets have a variety of flexibility built into them, so you can tailor them for your needs, but it is, in fact, configuration and not customization. But as Marie alluded to as well, the core services in the LMS will be leveraged as part of our LEO program, and we're going to be blending all of that in with other technologies to bring the learning experience alive in the way that we feel is most impactful. I don't think that there's any intent to try to replicate WebTyco or the experience of WebTyco, but rather a lot of the functionality or services that are currently delivered via WebTyco today must have a way to deliver the same capabilities in the future, but not necessarily in the same way. And I hope that that helps clarify that.
Yeah, this is why there's a team around me, so that when I use a word that's not exactly the right word, they can help focus this a little better. So I really appreciate that. And yeah, if I could just say a little bit more about that. You know, you have to understand that we have 4,000 adjuncts out there, some, and certainly hundreds of full-time faculty. We have, you know, rightly so, some faculty who completely understand all the behind-the-scenes work that's going on here because they are IT-centric. They understand what it means to configure, et cetera. But we have plenty of folks who are probably more like me who have no idea really how this is all working. And so as we communicate, what we're trying to do is really help the vast majority of people understand what we're doing. We're not always going to communicate it right, so please do ask these questions. There's absolutely no way that we simply want to have a new WebTyco experience. WebTyco was very limiting in certain ways. And so if I refer to WebTyco, honestly, what I'm trying to do is explain to the vast majority who are just hoping Desire to Learn won't be so different that it's going to take them a long time to learn, that there are certain ways that their knowledge will already transfer to the new system. That doesn't mean it will be exactly the same system. Okay, I think we can move on. Leo Communications and Training. You know, I'm thinking, Nikki, why don't you go ahead and go over this because you've got more of the specifics. And I think it might be a little more helpful if you can really lay this out, and I'll jump in if I think of anything that has to be added.
Absolutely, I'm happy to. And yes, please do jump in if I'm saying anything that's too project manager-ish. So we have inside of the LEO initiative, there are a multiple number of different sub-initiatives, if you will, going on. We call them work streams, and while you're not seeing all of them today, we tried to put together what was relevant to this audience, and I'll mention some others that are not represented on this slide. We have some major milestones, and in IT, when we talk about a program, we are talking about a project with multiple projects underneath it. Some of the milestones that are up and coming, I know a lot of folks are interested in what we're talking about after April of 2013, and thank you for the person who just asked about the year, because that's interesting that we had a number of eyes on this slide and we don't have a year on it. That's really funny. Thank you. So October, of course, is in November, are right now in 2012, and this spans into 2013. The next major activity for us is to begin planning what happens after the AMBA 640 rollout. So we're working on planning that right now. I know many folks are interested in when their course will roll into the new Desire to Learn system. Planning is underway for that today. In February, internally, we anticipate having a Desire to Learn up and running, and that will be for testing and beginning our training cycle with the faculty for AMBA 640. And then, of course, April 3rd is the day that the AMBA 640 class begins, and we'll have Phase 1 up and running and begin looking towards future phases. Also, many of you want to know how will you receive information about what's going on in the project. So one work stream we have is a communications work stream, and part of that plan are these updates. We have a project manager for the communications work stream who's been working on a stakeholder analysis over the past several weeks now, trying to understand what kind of information people need and how they'd like to receive it, and we are planning a number of things, including newsletters. We already have the community update website up and running. We will be soon adding a space to our Engage site, which I know many of you will begin using, and of course, there are a number of status updates that occur throughout the life cycle. As we get towards AMBA 640, the communications team will also survey those folks to see how their experience is going, and we'll do continuous improvement on the feedback that we receive. One thing that that we also have, and I think many of you are aware of, is our Ask Leo inbox, and I certainly encourage you to ask questions. Your questions help us tailor these presentations as well as the FAQ I mentioned that will be posted tomorrow. So we really count on your feedback and your input, and you are a part of the project with every question that you ask. The other piece is around training, and I know everyone's interested in training, and as Marie said, for this first phase, our training is really focused on those folks associated with the AMBA 640 course. We're working on a training plan now. We're working on compiling a training team, and over the next few months, we'll be developing training materials, leveraging the desire to learn information and tailoring it to our specific needs. Also, long-term, we'll have a scalable training plan that will be, will be announced as it's ready for all of the courses that roll in as they roll in. Another work stream that isn't represented on here, but many ask about, and we're in the very early planning phases, we still have some time for this, is around support. Our 360 support desk will remain in place as it is today, and we will be ensuring that all of the folks that answer the phone and assist you with your system questions are trained prior to the rollout, and there'll be more information about support as we move forward. Anything you'd like to add, Marie or Pete?
I would just like to add two things that I think, what I'm trying to do is think about what might be in the minds of our faculty. And the first one is, sorry, drop something. The first one is that I know everybody is wondering, well, when am I going to get to go into this? And as Nikki said, we're actually going to have a meeting with the two deans and me and Nikki and some of Pete's folks to talk about how we're going to chunk out which courses will go into Desire to Learn over the next year. And I'm going to ask for everybody's patience because I know it's probably split down the middle. There's probably half of you who can't wait to get into it and half of you that are, like, geez, I don't want to have to deal with learning something new, and I get that. That's human. We're going to have to make best decisions that will be based on a number of things. I mean, I'd love to say, well, we're going to take, volunteers. I can't promise you that's going to happen. We have to think through how to keep this as stable as possible, a stable experience for students. So it might be, and I don't know, it might be that we decide that, we go with the graduate school goes first, or maybe the undergraduate school in total goes first, or maybe certain kinds of programs go first. But we'll be really thinking this through, and we'll be able to tell you, shortly, I would say probably by, early part of next year, what the plan is for the next year after that. And again, if your course doesn't get in there when you maybe hoped it would, for some of you, you might have to go more quickly than you had hoped, and for others, you might have to wait. I really appreciate your patience because, again, when you're dealing with 97,000 students, there are a lot of factors to take into account. I think the other thing I'd like to say is one of the things I hope you're seeing here is that when Pete Young came to us, and the team that he's brought to us, we have much more of a focus on sophisticated project management. I think those of you who have taught for us for a long time or have been with us for a long time, you probably aren't used to this level of planning, and because we just weren't this sophisticated in the past. And I want to give you a measure of comfort, really, that we've got very smart, sophisticated folks putting these plans together, trying to think about everything, communication and updates and training, so that it's not as herky-jerky as it used to be in the past. And now we're not going to be perfect, I'm not saying that, but it's really a new day at the university. We are so large that we have to be very sophisticated in our project management work, and I really can't say enough good about the kinds of folks we have working with us. So please know that that's all going on behind the scenes. And that's it for me. We could probably move on. Unless Pete has something. Okay, So one of the things that's been happening, because we have very smart people who want to get in there and learn about Desire to Learn, is that apparently we've had some folks who have been trying to get Desire to Learn. If you contact the company, they will, for prospective clients, they will set up a Desire to Learn space for you. Now, let me remind everybody, we're not a prospective client anymore. We are now a client. So I would ask everybody not to go to that area on their website that says, you know, if you're a prospective client and you'd like to learn more about this, send us an email. Instead, what I would really welcome people to do is to go to the Desire to Learn community site, and we have a link up here for you. It's https, and then it's community.desiretolearn.com. If you go in there, this is the community user site, and there are folks in there who are already in institutions that use Desire to Learn. The site provides users with just-in-time training, quick refreshers on how to effectively use tools, etc., and there are lots of good conversations. What's most important is that you will experience a Desire to Learn learning space by going into this community. And I think that's really what people are interested in, like what's it going to look like and what's it going to feel like. So if you want to know, go in and check. Now, you can't sign up and get in the very same day. How do I know this? Because I'm in there. You have to enroll, and then it takes a day for them to send you the password, etc. So you will go in and see all this, and then I think if you have questions, feel free to come back and ask questions, but you're going to see really what it looks like by doing this. Anything else?
No, I think, yeah, Marie, thank you. This is Nikki again. That covers it. I noticed someone chatted into in the Q&A panel. There are also webinars. There's lots of great information in the community site. And so definitely echo Marie's comments. Please join the site, participate with your peers across the institution and institutions around the U.S.
And Marie, this is Pete, just to build on your comment. I think it's important for people to recognize that this is a terrific way for them to start to explore and experience the kinds of capabilities and functionality that will be available to them through our LEO program, but it won't necessarily resemble exactly what they're going to see in that demonstration system, if you will, that they have available. In a lot of cases, the way that they'll access our system will be a little different and so forth, and as we've pointed out, there are many other tools we'll be incorporating into the LEO experience. So this is a great way to start getting their feet wet, so to speak, and becoming familiar with the capabilities of a next generation core LMS. But don't get too hung up on the exact navigation or experience as they experience here, because it'll be very representative but not the same.
You know, Nikki and I, thanks Pete, Nikki and I talk about this all the time, that sometimes when you're trying to visualize a new software program or a new experience online, it's really helpful to have metaphors that help us think about it. So, you know, maybe the way to think about this is, about 8 years ago when I was living in Seattle, we bought a townhouse. Now, the townhouse was already, the construction had started. And they didn't say to us, okay, you can have it any way you want, right? So it wasn't completely up to us. But there were choices along the way. Do you want, you know, bathrooms next to every bedroom? Do you want this kind of tile in the bathroom? I mean, there were choices, you know, pick A, B, or C. And that's I think, what we're really talking about here. So that when you walked into our townhouse, based on the choices we made, it was the same, you know, structure. You could tell you were on the first, second, third floor, and all the rooms had, you know, similar functionality on each level. But what each room looked like, maybe how many bathrooms there were, slightly different. And I think that's what we're really talking about here. So you might go into the community site. It'll be Desire to Learn. You'll get the kind of feel of it. You'll know you're in Desire to Learn. But our instance of it might look slightly different. We might have fewer bathrooms or more bathrooms, or we might have better tile. But it's all within a choice menu that we need to configure as we go forward. Does that Nikki and Pete, is that a pretty good metaphor? I mean, is that something that can work for folks, do you think?
Absolutely. I think anything that they can start to get familiar with the art of the possible, if you will, which was the term we use a lot around here, really helps to inform people's expectations. And that, you know, what I'd like to obviously suggest is that the experience that we eventually roll out as part of LEO will hopefully be far better and more capable, right, than just the, if you will, out-of-the-box solution. But certainly this is a chance for them to see something different than the Tyco experience and to give them a more contemporary view of what some of the newer LMS solutions are capable of.
Very good. You know, we have a question, and I think, again, while I said let's hold them, I think it's worth answering here. Let me read it if you don't mind. As project management faculty, we have some experts out there, folks, so this is a good question. Why isn't the rollout calendar extended to 2013? These are the critical path months with many scheduled dependencies. Please show us this soon once rollout assignments for programs are made. This saves us all in planning. Well, let me start with a very simplistic answer, which is those dependencies and those rollout assignments for which programs, those decisions have not been made yet. So if you are in the project management program in the graduate school, let's say, I at this point, we can't tell you exactly when you're going to go to Desire to Learn. But I assure you, as soon as those decisions are made, these folks are going to be working on the plan. Now, you know, Nikki, add anything you want, but I wanted to make it really clear it's not your fault. I mean, we're working as fast as we can on this.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Marie. Thank you. I appreciate it. And one thing I'll add to this question is also appreciate the request. We are doing our best to put out as much information as we can as it's available, and we'll continue to do so. So thank you for your input.
Okay, I think we can move to the next slide. Okay. All right. Let me start by saying it is not the case that we don't have an academic model or an academic approach to how we teach our students. I think, though, we don't talk about it very often, and so this might seem like a new thing for people. But if you think about it, we do have an approach to how we have historically taught students online. We make assumptions based on practice and research. I mean, we didn't just pull this out of the air, but we make some assumptions that good learning means that students are in online classrooms that last for some number of weeks that are structured so that the students go through it together. They don't do it one at a time. They're not, doing individualized learning. They're learning in a group. They're discussing with each other. They're interacting with faculty. You know, one of the things that we ask our faculty to do and we try to train faculty to do is the right kinds of interaction with students. We believe that there has to be certain kinds of material that students can interact with, and the more that students interact with the material and spend time on a task, the more learning occurs. These are all parts of what we already have as a learning vision. And if you're in the undergraduate school, I'm hoping you're familiar with the undergraduate learning model. And if you're in the graduate school, you have a graduate learning model, which I know has just been revised. And if you don't know that there's a learning model for grad or undergrad, I'd really recommend that you ask your program director or your dean or whoever your next supervisor is to share it with you. It's not a secret, it's out there, but I think sometimes, you know, with communication being hard, you might not have heard about it. But our learning models really provide what I would call our academic vision. This is what we stand for when we talk about how students learn. Different universities have different models. And again, often they're not explicit. So if you go to a traditional university, the learning model usually is, if they haven't thought much about it, if students sit in a classroom and take notes from a faculty member who lectures, and they go home and process that information and read a textbook, and then, you know, write papers and come in and take exams, that's their kind of model of how students learn. Now, how students learn, there's a real science to it. And we are, I think, undergoing very rapidly a kind of a revolution in our understanding and application that students learn in ways that maybe in the past we haven't really valued as much. Passive learning is not a good way for students to learn, for example. I think we know that. We've been trying to be much more active and interactive in our online courses, but we've got to be a lot more specific in going to the research literature and going to learning science and doing our own evaluation of learning, which we do a lot of at UMEC, probably more than many other universities. And we really have to continually base how we design courses and train faculty and communicate to students based on what we know really works and helps them to learn more. So to start all of that, we really need a coherent, brief, concise, what I would call an academic vision or a learning vision. And so what this should be is just a set of statements that guide us over the next 5 years. I mean, I can't say 10 years. Things are changing so quickly and so rapidly that even 5 years, you know, what we think is going to be learning in 5 years or how we deliver learning for students, it's going to probably be a little different. But at any rate, a broad set of statements that really outlines where we believe learning should go within that period of time, or how students are learning and how we're delivering education. So I've asked a group of faculty from the school, and we have a representative from FAC to help us. We had I think it was a 2 or 3 hour meeting where we had a discussion about lots of things that were going on in education and how we might want to make sure we're continuing in that path. And then I've asked a subgroup to come up with a draft of this very succinct kind of learning model, learning vision for the future. Once we have that, and we should have that in a couple of weeks, again, this will be a draft, I'm going to ask the deans in particular, and certainly all of the units under academic affairs, so Center for Teaching and Learning, the library, everybody who, you know, is focused on the academic mission of the university, both in Engage, in Web Tyco 999s, in any kind of live meetings that occur, to have a discussion of this and to get input. At the end of the day, I would really like this to be a model that everybody can at least say, well, I might have, you know, I can support this. This is where I think things are heading. Now, there might be things you would have added, there might be things you would have subtracted, but I'm really looking for a consensus sort of agreement that this is where things are heading and we need to be heading in this direction. So I want everybody to take part in this. I don't think you're going to see anything that will shock you. I mean, we're not going to do something that you probably haven't already heard about or thought about, but we have to have it in writing and codified so we all can agree when we move in these directions. So this is really just my way of saying, you know, look for this. At some point you will be asked either in Engage or in a Web Tyco classroom or in a faculty somewhere, you might be asked to read and comment on this. And we'll even, as soon as I have that draft, maybe at our next update in December, we will put this up and ask for feedback. So you'll have a chance to really take a look at this, and I think it'll be good for the university because then we can sort of coalesce around it. Now, why is that important? Because when we have this one-page draft, then it's going to be that much easier for us to hand this to IT and say, help us get here, okay? And so as we pick various technologies, as we configure desire to learn, this learning model or this learning vision is going to be the basis upon which we make a lot of these decisions. And I think it will be a really powerful sort of piece to drive us forward. Okay, I think unless someone else has a comment, we can probably move on, but I'll be happy to answer questions about this during Q&A.
Yeah, and I think we've reached that Q&A period. We're at our last slide, and as you all know, we have community updates the third Thursday of each month, and I appreciate all of your participation and look forward to more of it. We try to provide project updates and relevant information, and I'll leave this slide up while we take questions. We will post the recording from this session by the end of the day on Monday, and tomorrow, as I mentioned at the beginning of this call, we have taken all of your questions both during these sessions and via Ask Leo to compile a frequently asked questions document that will be posted on the Google site tomorrow by the end of the day. I see some questions rolling in, Marie, and I'll start with the first one. There's a question about D2L and if they provide an independent help desk, and I'll let Pete take that one.
Yes, Theo, thanks for the question. And they will be providing an elevated tier of support to us as an institution. The model or the plan right now is for us to be able to continue to support our faculty and students directly at the initial stages or level. And then staff here internally, when cases are escalated or there's difficult problems to solve, we'll have access to resources within D2L to help us with those issues that are relevant, if you will, to the core LMS platform.
Great, thank you, Pete. The next question I see, perhaps Marie, you can help me with. Do you see that question, the accounting?
Yeah, and I don't know because it's a really kind of a technical question. It's the question of if you teach, it really doesn't matter what you teach, but if you have a different case, if you have a singular case that you want each student to work on, is there a way to give a specific assignment to one student? And I would be guessing, I don't know, this is something, I think this is one of those things where we might want to make a list of these very specific kinds of questions to, you know, look at as you guys are configuring.
Absolutely, and James, I'm sorry that we can't answer your specific question today, but we do retain all of the questions asked during these sessions, and I will circulate them through the project team as we get deeper into the functionality of Desire to Learn. My hope is that we can come back in a few months with some of these very specific functionality questions and provide answers. Unfortunately, we can't answer your question today. The next question coming in, how many have gone to Desire to Learn's interesting website and actually test drove their quote-unquote sandbox? I'm not sure how to answer that question either. I don't know, Patricia, if you're asking how many people at UMUC, or if you could clarify that question, we'll be happy to circle back to it. The next question, will Desire to Learn interface with Wiley Plus, Accounting Lab, and Connect for accounting classes? Again, we haven't reached that point in the project where we're down to the very specifics around each academic program. Today, I hate to say that I can't answer that question, but it's a very specific question around one academic program, and we haven't reached that level of planning. Okay, thank you, Patricia. So how many UMUC administrators in the LEO team? Let's see.
Well, I think the idea is how many are you guys just, I'm going to be crass here, are you just running off and putting this together, or are you actually talking to us?
Right,
so,
and I think, Marie, one thing I see in this question that you might not even be aware of is we are actually working right now. So WebTyco has been at UMUC for a very long time, and we've all become accustomed to a certain terminology that's used within that system. And yep. Desire to Learn has their own terminology as well. So one thing that the communications work stream within the project is working on is what I would call a terminology mapping. So we called it this in WebTyco, we'll call it that in Desire to Learn, and as we move forward in the project, we'll be sure to bridge those two different, kind of languages, if you will, between the two systems. And I don't know, that sounds like part of this question. Will we have the same terminology that we're using? The answer is we are trying to ensure that happens.
And why don't you go over, Nikki, just to remind folks of the different groups that are helping to steer this, and not specifically, but how many faculty we've given you and how many administrators, and I mean, you have a cast of thousands that you're talking to in some ways.
Yeah, very true. And Patricia, these are great questions. I'm glad that I got to the heart of your question. We're working with everyone, really. The community updates are one avenue. All of the questions that folks ask through this and Ask Leo are very helpful. We have we're working with the course development teams. We're working with the schools. We have a series of people in IT. We have our vendor partner. We have all of the faculty. We have students participating in this. So really, we're getting input from everywhere to help tailor this experience as much as possible and ensure that it's success.
Perfect.
Any other questions?
Oh, I think what will the Q&A be?
I'm sorry?
The Q&A that will be posted. I think we're getting questions. Yeah, go ahead.
Yep, the Q&A, we retain all the questions in this session and work them through with the project team. We will have an FAQ on the Google site, and that is a culmination of all of the questions that we receive from the Q&A in this session. We try to categorize them so that they're easy to read and digest. I see a question around getting access to the faculty link on the Google site. If you do not have, if you're clicking on that and getting a permission request, you can contact the help desk, and they'll be happy to assist you with that. Any other questions today? Okay, I see a specific question around when we will be fully operational with in 2014 or 2015. So the goal, and again, we're planning, and as Marie mentioned, we're working through how many courses and what the logic is, if you will, to roll courses into Desire to Learn. We're hoping to be fully operational in early 2014. Once we have the final plan around how many courses we'll roll at a time, we'll get more specific about that. And as Marie mentioned, we're planning to roll out that plan early next year in 2013, but right now the goal is 2014.
Except, can I make a comment here, and this is to help people really get a different mindset. We're talking about fully functional. At this point, I think that question really means, when will all courses now be in Desire to Learn? But we have to think, remember I started this by saying Desire to Learn is just one piece of the learning experience. And I think for each program, you're going to see that we are going to ask the directors, and they're already probably thinking about this, what is the experience for students going through that program? So we had a question from the accounting faculty who said, what about Wiley Plus and some of these other pieces of software that we use that really help students learn? We need to configure and integrate the types of software that help students in that kind of program really learn the best. And so there will never be an end to this, folks. And I know that might really, I mean, wouldn't it be nice that there would be a date, that there will be an end, and we can say, here's our learning experience online. It will be like this forever and ever. Those days are really, really gone. Now, there will be a day that we're completely in Desire to Learn, but there will be plenty of other changes going on around that, integration with other kinds of software. We might be asking you in a particular program to be thinking about e-portfolios and how those connect into the Desire to Learn software. So, again, it will be project management based, so you won't be on your own. But we have to constantly think about how do we want our students to learn, and what's the technology, and how will it be configured and integrated so that our students will be able to learn at the very maximum that we can help them with. And I think we have to always be thinking like that. We are a university that is focused on how students learn primarily through technology and through online methods of learning. So whereas at, say, a traditional university, a big change for them would be, well, we're going to, build a new student union. That's going to make the campus look different, or we're going to route the roads through here differently. Always think about us as we're online, we're in the cloud, however you want to think about it, and that's where the changes have to keep coming.
Great. Thank you, Marie. I don't see any questions, any additional questions coming in. Thank you all for joining our November community update. Again, this recording will be posted on the Google site on Monday, and we look forward to talking to you again in December. Have a good day, afternoon, or evening.
Thank you. Bye.